Good afternoon and welcome to Aspire Week, where we discuss flying cars, future technology, careers, work within the aerospace industry. In this session, we have Mr. Hon Lung from Volocopter, head of the Singapore office and business development in Southeast Asia. Hon, welcome to the show.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Welcome. Hon, many of us know Volocopter for its air taxi demonstration in Marina Bay back in 2019. How far away are we from air taxis being a reality here in Singapore? Are you able to share on that?
Sure, yeah. I think we announced our commitment to launch. This is giving away, I think, the presentation a bit, but we announced our commitment to launch here in Singapore at the end of last year, and we committed to doing so within the next 3 years.
Okay, so sometime in 2024, likely.
Sometime before 2024.
All right, looking forward to that. I'm sure a lot of our audience is looking forward to learn more about the company. I will now leave you to share more.
Yeah, do you want me to start the presentation then?
Yes.
Cool, let me just quickly make sure I'm selecting the right window. Is this okay?
Yeah, be sure to turn on the sound so if you have videos.
Absolutely. Cool. I thank you. Thanks for having it. Thanks for the introduction, Johnson, and thank you for having me. Hopefully, I can make this interesting. I don't want to, give you a boring presentation. Let me talk a bit. I'll talk a bit about myself first, just to give you a sense of, how I got here, and then we can dive into. I've got some cool videos to show you guys. As Johnson said, I'm the head of Singapore at Volocopter, so leading the deployment and the business here. I'm the guy on the left there, by the way. This happens to be a picture with the Indonesian ambassador to Singapore. So a great honor to meet him in person. You can probably tell by my accent that I'm not local. I'm actually a Chinese American. I've only been in Singapore for about 3.5 years. I'm a PR. How I kind of got into this space is really by, I would say, accident. So when I graduated college, university, I have electrical and engineering degree. And at the time, of course, this is in the US, the IT industry, so Google, Facebook, etc., is all the rage. So I joined Google coming out of university, and really stayed in the software industry. That you see the traditional software industry. So Rakuten is a major Japanese e-commerce company. Twilio does a number of telephonic APIs, so being able to make phone calls, right, with some programming code. And so you wonder, kind of how I made the transition into this, pretty much pure aviation world. And that really happened, I think, via a company called AirMap, which is a startup that builds software to help manage drones traffic in the sky. And please ask more questions later. But if you actually look at how airplanes, the traffic management for airplanes work today, it's quite, I would say, analog. And frankly, the fundamental technology actually is still coming from the World War II era. With pilots in the cockpit speaking over regular radio to air traffic controllers. With the with drones coming onto the scene, right? You really need to have a different system to help coordinate that, and that's kind of what my previous company, AirMap, tried to do. Is to build the software to manage that, and that's kind of how I made the shift from kind of software world into an aviation software world, and now really fully into aviation. I think without speaking too much about myself, that's kind of just wanted to share that career path. For those of you who are interested, happy to answer more questions about that at a later point. But I want to go ahead and share more about Volocopter because that's probably what you're interested in, and I will start that with a video. Yeah, so that's just a quick teaser. I think on Volocopter, we've got a couple more videos coming up. So I'll just, hopefully that got you excited a bit and woke you up. Let me quickly walk you through. So this picture that you see here, of course, is a real picture of the Volo City, which is a multi-copter design that you see. I'll go a bit more into the detail. This is a real picture. You can see here there's 2 seats. This is the autonomous version that we are developing in Germany. We are a German company. I do see that as a question, but we are opening branch offices all over the world. Singapore is our Asia Pacific headquarter. Perhaps let me show another video just to show kind of what we envision to be the near-term future here in Singapore. At the risk of having too many videos and not speaking enough, hopefully this really excited you. I think hopefully this answers a lot of questions actually about kind of how we plan to operate, etc. But let me continue. As I mentioned before, we're a German company. I'm not going to go into the institutional shareholders, etc., the boring stuff. In the case of the audience, in light of the audience here, let me just quickly mention the challenge that we're trying to face, that we're trying to solve here. It's 4-pronged. On the left there, you see the increasing urbanization of this world, and this is especially true here in Asia. People are migrating from rural areas into cities. That's causing increasing road congestions in the road networks that we see in mega cities all around the world. At the same time, climate change, right, and global warming in general is really having an impact now on our daily lives, right? We see it, on TV. And we have, especially with Singapore, a very globalized economy, very well connected, and there is heightened time sensitivity, right, in this, fast-moving global economy. So these are the challenges that we look to solve, and our mission, right, is to bring urban air mobility, sustainable urban air mobility for everyone. This, of course, is a real picture of the 2X that Johnson mentioned, right, for us to have the flight trial over the marina. Kind of my favorite little story that I like to tell here is that little known, is not really reported, is that we actually did 2 flights over the marina. Of course, there's one, the public one that everybody took videos of, but actually the day before we actually did another test flight, a brief test flight, and there was nobody noticed. People were just walking alongside. If they didn't see the vehicle, they really didn't notice anything, and that really is testament to I think just how quiet, right, and how well integrated air taxis can become in a very major city like Singapore, at the very heart of it. I'll quickly mention again just a very bit about Volocopter. We are a German company, as mentioned. This is actually our 10th year in operation. We've been around since 2011. If you go online, you'll find that our first prototype actually flew in 2011. It's the first distributed electric propulsion aircraft, right? And it was very, very experimental. Our founder sitting on a chair that's on top of a yoga ball with 18 propellers strapped to the yoga ball. So I won't show it here, but if you're interested, please go on YouTube and you can find that video as well. The Volocity, which is the aircraft that we hope to bring to Singapore to launch, is our 5th generation prototype. We've conducted many test flights, and we are in the process of certifying the aircraft with the European Aviation Safety Agency, which is one of the major safety organization in aviation that helps us prove that the aircraft is safe. And I'll get into that in a little bit. This gives you a sense of all of the places, at least the highlights of all the places where we've done the test flights. Of course, most of them are done in our headquarters in Germany, but occasionally we go outside. And of course, Singapore, there you see there in 2019 is the key one on this side of the world. But besides that, we've also flown in the Middle East. Right? We've flown in the US, we've flown in Finland, and of course in Germany. I'll also mention that we do have a very big drone, right? So this is the same size as pretty much the same size as the Volocity. You can really stand, when you think about a drone, you usually think about a small camera drone. This is a big drone that can carry up to 200 kilograms of payload. And you can stand fully underneath it, standing up without bending down, right? So we have that as a product as well, and the first test flight for that took place also in 2019. Let me go into maybe just add a little bit more excitement. So this is our aircraft lineup. Of course, I've mentioned the drone already. That's a real picture that you see there, and just giving you a sense of how big it is. The Volocity, which I'll go into again in a little bit more. That was the very first picture that you saw. And now let me just share with you the newest member of our aircraft family, the Voloconnect. And this is a graphic. I have to point that out. We are still in early stages of development for this aircraft, but we did very recently announce it, and so I will show it now. So this is the Voloconnect. As I mentioned before, we're in the early stages of development for it. But I can actually show you this very brief next video that proves and shows that we actually do have a flying scaled prototype. It's about 3 meters wide, that we actually very recently tested. Hope you're excited. Let me go a bit, just tell you a little bit more about our aircrafts. The two on the left there that you see, Volodrone and Volocity, are based on the same multi-copter design, right? So we have 18 propellers on top, which really helps to increase the redundancy and the safety of the aircraft that we offer. I think the better way to really think about this is not that it's a drone, right? But really rather think about it as a electric helicopter that has 18 propellers on top. Most helicopters today you see have one, right, main propeller on top, and maybe it has a rear propeller in the back. And of course, when you only have one propeller, one or two propeller, those are major points of failure, right? In case one of the propellers, have any issues, it's a major problem for those of you who are on, for the people on board. We have 18 of those, right? And that really, that redundancy, that increase in redundancy really helps with both the stability, right, but also the safety of the aircraft. That redundancy also actually allows us to lower the noise, right? Because basically with a lower, with more propellers, right, we're actually able to distribute the lift amongst more propellers, right? And that actually allows us to spin the propellers at a lower speed. We can optimize them, right? We don't have just one propeller to play with. We can change them around, right? There's 18 of them. And this really helps us modulate both the frequency and the volume of the noise that's generated, and that's how we're able to really make a difference. That's really what makes us what makes this category of aircraft unique compared to existing helicopters. We're also fully electric. Right, so we don't have, for example, a internal combustion engine on board. For those of you who know cars, right, you usually burn fossil fuel that drives a piston, right, and then the piston is mechanically what's turning the gears to make the propeller on a helicopter spin. We don't have that. We have a motor, right, which again is fundamentally a different design, right, and we have batteries that are connected to the motor spin, and that then turns the propellers and creates lift for the aircraft. So much simpler by design, but at the same time much more redundant, and hence that's really where the game changer is coming from. So Volodrone, Volocity, again, based on the similar design that you see there. One is designed to carry human passengers, the other one designed to carry logistics, and you see the payload is about the same, 200 kilograms. Cruise speed about the same, and I'll come to the safety point here in a bit, but this is 10 to the -9 safety, right? And maybe I'll explain that on a later slide. The range here you see is 35 kilometers, and you may think that's not very far at all, and that is true, but I'll address that also in a bit. Now, with the Volo Connect on the right-hand side here, this is a different category, a different type of aircraft design. This is what's called a lift and cruise design, and you saw it in the video during the takeoff phase. The 6 propellers on top are spinning, right? That creates the lift for the aircraft to take off, and then, right, once it enters the forward flight phase, so when the aircraft is traveling forward, the turbines, the twin turbines turn on, right, and the propellers are stopped, right, and that allows for the aircraft to fly very efficiently forward, and that's really what then made the difference, right, in terms of the range, right, and in terms of the speed, and also, of course, the payload. So we see the Volo Connect as a different category of aircraft. So you can think, maybe you guys know, there's really big jets like the Airbus A380, right, versus smaller ones like the Airbus A320, right? So 150 people versus, the Airbus A380 can carry up to 400, 500 people, right? So these we see in similar ways as performing different mission profiles and operating in different scenarios. And this slide then shows you what those scenarios are, right? For the Volocity, aptly named, it's really meant for the city, right? For the urban environment, right? Really traveling within the city. One statistic I can offer is that 93% of actually cities around the world, when you look at the distance from their major airport to the city center, 93% of those cities are actually less than 15 kilometers away, right? And that's actually well within the range of what the Volocity can offer. Now, the Volodrone has similar ranges, and we really see this as a game changer. Again, won't go too much into it here now, because again, we're about air taxis. On the Volo Connect, right, then with the 100-kilometer range, we can then expand the service offering to really going farther, right? So from Singapore, for example, we would be able to easily cross into JB and even go beyond that, right? And we would be able to hit Batam and Bintan easily. One thing I haven't mentioned yet is Volo IQ, right? And this is a key part of it. So, you know, me coming from the software space, this is really where then the difference, right? Actually, a very big piece of the back end coming in is really developing the smart control software that will help us manage, right, and operate and maintain the aircraft. Traditional aviation is still very much paper-based, right? You have a chart that you write on, and you go and you check your schedule, you know, on a piece of paper, and you say, oh, this aircraft has flew for, you know, let's say 10 hours, hence now it needs, you know, X, Y, and Z checks. Hopefully with the Volo IQ, we can do away with all that, and we can also optimize the schedule, right, so that we can do more predictive maintenance and really be smarter, right, about, you know, when we need to maintain the aircraft and when we don't. This Volo IQ will also be a consumer-facing application, which really means that, you know, this is an app that you will be able to download on your phone, similar to, you know, your Grab and Uber app, and be able to then order an air taxi globally, right, in all of the cities that we will launch in around the world. Now, coming into the Volo City, I've already mentioned quite a bit about the redundancy and the noise. I guess maybe one thing I'll mention on the battery, right, is that we actually don't fast charge the batteries. We actually have a battery swap system. We have 9 of them. And this really, you know, to us really enables us to minimize the ground time that the aircraft is on the ground. And optimize the operation, of course. But at the same time, it also allows us to actually charge the batteries normally. And that allows us then to extend the life of the battery, the overall lifetime of the battery itself. And of course, that allows us to have savings that we then can pass on to the customer and offer this at a lower price. The 200-kilogram payload, I'll come to this now. Really, what does that mean? It means that we can carry 2 passengers on a autonomous flight. Now, when we actually start operations in Singapore, we'll actually start with a pilot on board. Right. So what does that mean? That means that we will actually only be able to carry 1 passenger in the beginning. Over time, right, we plan to then start automating, right, and then really having remote pilots take over the aircraft, right, so that we can then have the 2 passengers on board. There's many reasons, actually benefits for us to do this. Part of it is the ability for us to launch quickly. Part of it is that regulations today, you know, with helicopters already exist that allows us to leverage those same regulations in order to launch operations. Drone regulations, you know, at this point around the world is still quite nascent, and unfortunately, aviation. Maybe this is another key piece of tidbit for you is aviation is one of the few industries where the regulator must approve you before you go and start operations. If you think about, you know, most of the other industries out there, you know, internet technologies, for example, you can launch first and then you get regulated later, right? But aviation, that's not possible. You know, we have to get the aircraft certified. We have to get the regulators, the government sign off before we can start operations. I won't mention too much about the helicopter comparison. I think the key here really is that, you know, one of the reasons why helicopters have not been as common as they are is primarily because of safety and noise, but also because of the operating costs, just how complex a helicopter is and how many, you know, single points of failures there are. We're able to, you know, provide a lower operating cost. And I think I see some questions about price. In the beginning, you know, we're very, you know, open and transparent in saying the service will be a bit more expensive than you would like, right? But that's not our goal. Our goal is not to just target the rich and the famous. We really want to bring this so that everybody can enjoy, you know, the views and leverage urban air mobility. Our goal is not to replace, you know, your traditional taxis. That's really not, you know, we want to complement it, right? There is a role for all these types of vehicles to play, and there's plenty, right, of mobility demands for that. So we will be a bit more expensive, and
I'm sorry, can you still hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
I apologize. I think my headset ran out of battery. I apologize for that. Let me just say, as I was talking about the cost, right? We will be a bit more expensive, right, compared to your regular taxis. But what we believe we can hit in the long run, right, is what we call premium taxi prices. So, well, let's say a bit more expensive, right, than the existing taxis. But when you're in a hurry, right, when you need to get somewhere quickly, we believe that this is a premium that most consumers, most customers would be willing to pay. Last but not least, I'll mention on the safety piece, 10 to the minus 9. What does that really mean? When you look at aircraft certification today, so your traditional Airbus and Boeing jetliners, right, where that you use to, for example, fly to Hong Kong or to China or Japan, Australia, Europe, they are certified to this safety standard, 10 to the minus 9. What that really means is one catastrophic failure in 1 billion flight hours, right? So traditional aviation is very, very safe, right? And basically what we're trying to say is this aircraft is being certified to that very same standard, right? And we believe that's necessary in order to convince the mass, the crowd, you, yourself, your teachers, your parents, to really step on board the aircraft, because it is a new technology, and we want to make sure that we can match existing aviation's safety levels. Just very briefly on the noise, I know I'm running out of time. Traditional helicopters, you can see, we're 4 to 5 times more quiet, right, quieter than traditional helicopters at 120 meters flyover distance, and it's really not that much louder than me speaking right now compared to what the noise that we'll generate. In our flight trial in October of 2019, another product that we actually showed off is the landing infrastructure. So maybe here's another tip that we are not able to just land on top of any rooftop, right? We do need dedicated infrastructure to land in. And that kind of plays into the safety aspect, right? When you're able to land on the road, there's definitely factors there's too many variables that could cause an unsafe situation. So being able to land at a voloport or vertiport infrastructure, that will definitely help us with the safety aspect. And my background, as well as this picture that you see here, is a real picture, right, of the voloport that we built in Marina South, right, on the floating platform there, and we were able to win a number of awards, with this design. I've already covered the Volo IQ quite a bit, so I'll skip this slide. And in the interest of time, again, I'll mention quickly, just again, another tidbit in the aviation world. In order to really certify an aircraft, you actually have to certify the company, right? And that company certification is actually called a design organization approval. This is granted by EASA. And we are proud to be the first company to receive this design organization back in 2019 as well. Now, from a market size perspective, you can really see, the market size here. Really, I mean, these are huge numbers, right? Trillions of dollars to billions of dollars, of potential. I think, anyone can imagine that if we're actually able to successfully launch the service, right, and then start to build up the network, that this will, and then again, if we are able to offer it at the right price point, this will become a huge industry that will really fundamentally change how people travel within cities. Right now, you primarily, fly when you travel internationally. With urban air mobility, with air taxis, you'll be doing that, even if you're trying to get across town. And I think the other point that I'll make here is, in terms of the regional split, we see actually here in Asia that the majority of the market will, 45% of it will actually be here. And that's partially because when you look at population, when you look at the density of cities, and where the largest mega cities are in the world, they're all here in Asia Pacific, right? And there's a lot fewer of those in Europe and in America. As I mentioned before, we've committed to launching in Singapore, but we've also made a commitment to launch in Paris. And this also is, our goal is to do so before the Paris Olympics in 2024. I'll quickly show two last videos about how this will actually come about, right? So we're not going to launch, a full network all at once. So on the left there, you see it's a single route, right, from point-to-point connections, and we'll be very focused on saving time, right, bypassing bottlenecks, bridges, ferries, etc., right? And over time, what we'll do is we'll add additional vertiports, right, and hubs and nodes along the way to really then build out a network of vertiports in a city. And that, of course, will come with economies of scale, right? So we're able to basically offer more service, and that will then bring down the cost, right, to offer the service. That's how we plan to build up the vertiport network. And lastly, I was asked to talk about potential career paths. I'm personally very excited, right, about the growth of urban air mobility. This is really a new field of aviation. We know, I think you can read in the news just how badly hit the aviation industry has been with COVID-19. We see this as, a new sector in the industry that is now opening up, right, in the midst of COVID-19. We're still in the midst of it, and we really think that this is a high area of growth for the industry in general. So these are some of the roles that we generally look for, right? We have pilots, ground operations staff, engineers, commercial developers, etc. These are all certainly very relevant roles for us, right, as we look to grow and expand the operations in Singapore. With that, I will wrap up my presentation and I will open myself up for questions.
All right, thanks, Hon. Looks like exciting times ahead, and air taxi is coming sooner rather than later. So we have a couple of questions that we consolidated. I think the first one being, why was Singapore chosen as a location for the first manned flight test in Asia?
Yeah, I think, look, Singapore really has, one of the best, an open and efficient governments in the world, and definitely here in Southeast Asia. So, without being too political about it, right? I mean, we've really found just a good working relationship with the Singapore government, the openness to really mutually exchange, to learn, and to learn from each other, and to work towards something that's really special, the first manned flight here in Asia. So it's really, I would say, it's really the willingness for the government to work with private sector, work with companies like ours that drew us to Singapore in the first place. And of course, when you then look at the broader situation in terms of the ecosystem, right? So the different companies that exist here already, as well as just how metropolitan and how urban the situation is in Singapore. It's a challenge for us really to fly in such a densely populated area, and we wanted to take that on as a challenge as well. And so that's why we chose to take on this challenge in Singapore.
A strategic location. Okay. How is the airspace managed after the addition of all these air taxis? I think that's a good concern.
Yeah, it's a very, very good question. My personal opinion, I have to say, is I think we look at the existing, how air traffic management is done today, right? And I think we're going to see an evolution from there. At the same, it's really talking about safe integration, and I think it's really talking about specific needs, right? So rather than building out a whole new system, with all the bells and whistles, the evolution, I think, of how airspace will be managed is really going to be step by step. For us in Singapore, in our commitment, we mentioned that the first route that we plan to launch is really more touristic in nature. So it's really meant to give you a great view, a breathtaking view, right, of the marina area. And that allows us to limit the operation area to, a specific piece of the airspace. And then over time, right, as public confidence builds up in the technology, right, as people get used to air taxis flying in the marina, right, we can then expand from there. Of course, really still making sure that we are the word is deconflicted, right? So that we don't run into other users of the airspace, like drones, like traditional manned aviation, and like military aircraft.
Is large air displacement an issue?
I'm not an aerospace engineer, so I don't know if I can answer this question properly. If the question is really around noise, we really have, relatively, again, the propellers for us is much smaller than a traditional helicopter. And so the amount of displacement that we generate is actually much smaller because, again, when you think about radius, right, when you have a much smaller radius, the area that the propellers are spinning at is much smaller. So again, without going into too much into it, I don't think so, but maybe that's a question I can take away.
Was the Volocopter trial run with MOT over Marina Bay area? Were there any issues that surfaced?
There were certainly a number of issues that surfaced, when we are looking at, and there continues to be issues that needs to be, resolved. Certainly, I unfortunately, a lot of those discussions are still ongoing, and so I won't be able to go into the details. But what I can say, I think, publicly here is that the trial that we did in October of 2019 was a great learning on both sides. For us with MOT, with CWAS, the Civil Aviation Authority of Singapore, and really, the whole area. So, for example, the marina is actually managed by PUB, right? So the Marina Bay supplies 10% of the fresh drinking water in Singapore. And this is not what you would typically think of, right, when you think about the flight trial, but it happens over the marina. And so we definitely had to build up an engagement with many government agencies, more so than just MOT and CAS.
Okay. And just to expand on this, right, with 2024 as a target, what will be some of the top of mind challenges that we need to overcome before then?
Yeah, so there's when you think about operating an aircraft, we're actually not too different from an airline, right? When you think about what we need. So when you think about SIA, Singapore Airlines, or really any traditional airlines, what do they need? They need pilots, they need the aircraft to be certified, and they need that aircraft to be brought into Singapore. So logistics is one. We have the unique challenge of introducing a new type of aircraft to Singapore, and so we do anticipate a number of test flights to be needed to be done locally prior to launch. The buildup of the infrastructure is another major one, right? So when you look around Singapore, you really don't see that many helipads. So for us, we would we're actually in the process, and we would need to build up the ground infrastructure here to allow for that operation. And of course, construction takes time, right? We need to break ground, we need to go and build it up, right? So building a whole new vertiport, that's going to take time. So hopefully this just gives you a sense of some of the challenges that's needed and the work that myself and my team is very hard at work doing.
So infrastructure will be one of them for sure. Will Volocopter tech be passed on into the commercial world in the future, for example, privately owned flying vehicles?
If I can speak, I think if I speak on behalf of Volocopter, what I can say is, from a company strategy perspective, we do not see us selling the aircraft to private individuals at this point. Part of that is because of safety. Part of that is when you look at the aircraft, we're still looking at professionally trained pilots would be needed to operate it, even though it is a much simpler aircraft. Over time, and now I'm speaking more on a personal basis, personal capacity. Over time, I think we'll see autonomous technology kicking in, and that will then lower the technical barrier or the training requirement for people to operate the aircraft. And with having increased public acceptance, I think you can start to see people, feeling comfortable with operating the vehicle themselves. I think at the end of the day, it's really about safety. How can you create an autonomous aircraft, that is really safe, for really anybody to operate. And I would also like to think that when that autonomous technology is there, we'll likely see this being offered as a service. So it's more of a mobility as a service offering, rather than us, selling you a vehicle. We just sell you a subscription to have the aircraft come to you whenever you need it, right? It's, rather than selling you the vehicle in particular.
So it's a pay-per-use, like a PayPal of helicopters or air taxis.
Yeah.
Okay, this is about limited land space, right? So I think earlier on we talked about the infrastructure really. So maybe you can move on to the next question.
That is all we have.
Okay, so that was the last question, Hon. I'd like to just take the opportunity to thank you very much for joining us and sharing your insights. Thank you for joining us once again.
Thank you very much for having me.
Cheers. So that is all for today. Tomorrow we will start at 2:15 and we have Mr. Robin Viva Tebatasan. And the following session at 3:45 will feature Mr. Sean Lee from eVTOL. See you then. And don't go. On the 1st of July, we have invited a very special guest on the show, NASA astronaut Jeff Williams. Let's watch this highlight.
Standing by. And liftoff. Jeff Williams, Alexei Archin, and Oleg Skropochka launching to the International Space Station.
So again, this will happen on the 1st of July at 9 p.m. It's a Thursday. If you have not already signed up, there is a link to do so in the chat, as well as when you end this session. To sign up, join us then. And thank you all for being a great audience. Please give us your inputs on how you found the sessions, and I look forward to seeing you at the next one tomorrow. Bye-bye.